My ex texted, "Increase the child support or I take you to court." I replied, "Proceed as necessary." Then I proved my lawyer what proof my ex was hiding income and misusing funds. 72 hours later, her lawyer was suddenly calling me to negotiate. I, 34M, stared at my phone screen for what felt like an eternity, reading the text message over and over again. The words burned into my retinas. "Increase the child support or I take you to court." My ex-wife had sent this ultimatum at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, probably after a few glasses of wine and whatever financial crisis she'd manufactured this month. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to type out a lengthy explanation about how I was already paying more than the court-mandated amount, how I covered every school expense, every medical bill, every extracurricular activity for our 8-year-old daughter. But instead, I typed 4 words that would change everything. Proceed as necessary. The satisfaction was immediate but brief. What she didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment for 6 months. It started last spring when my daughter mentioned offhandedly that Mommy had bought a new car. Not just any car, a brand new BMW X5. When I picked her up the following weekend, I saw it gleaming in the driveway of the house my ex claimed she could barely afford. The math didn't add up. She worked part-time as a dental hygienist, claimed minimal income on every support modification request, yet somehow maintained a lifestyle that suggested otherwise. That's when I hired a private investigator. The PI's name was Rodriguez, a former cop who specialized in financial investigations. I explained my suspicions during our first meeting at a coffee shop downtown. My ex had been crying poverty for 2 years while seemingly living beyond her means. Rodriguez nodded knowingly and told me these cases were more common than I'd think. For 3 months, Rodriguez compiled evidence. Bank records obtained through legal channels, employment verification, social media analysis, and surveillance reports painted a picture I'd suspected but never confirmed. My ex wasn't just hiding income. She was actively defrauding the system. The smoking gun came in the form of employment records. While claiming to work only 20 hours per week at the dental office, payroll records showed she was actually working full-time under a different classification to avoid reported income. Additionally, she'd started a side business doing freelance dental hygiene work, completely unreported to the court. Her actual income was nearly 3 times what she'd declared in our last modification hearing. But it got worse. The child support money meant for our daughter's food, clothing, and housing, was being funneled into personal luxuries. Credit card statements showed spa treatments, expensive dinners, and shopping sprees that had nothing to do with child care. Meanwhile, she continued to demand more money from me, claiming our daughter needed additional support. I kept all this information to myself, waiting for the right moment. That moment came with her threatening text message. The next morning, I called my attorney's office. My lawyer had been handling family law for 20 years and had seen every trick in the book. When I walked into her office with 3 boxes of evidence, her eyes lit up like Christmas morning. She spent 2 hours reviewing everything Rodriguez had compiled: bank statements, employment records, tax documents, surveillance photos, and a detailed analysis of spending patterns. By the end of our meeting, she was shaking her head in disbelief. My attorney explained our next steps. We would file a motion for contempt of court for hiding income and misusing child support funds. We'd also request an immediate review of support payments, potentially seeking reimbursement for overpayments. Most importantly, we'd push for a forensic accounting of all funds to ensure our daughter's needs were actually being met. The motion was filed Thursday afternoon. By Friday morning, my ex's attorney had received the documentation package, all 47 pages of evidence meticulously organized and cross-referenced. Rodriguez had done his job well. Friday passed quietly. Too quietly. I knew my ex well enough to recognize when she was panicking. She'd probably spent the day frantically calling her lawyer, trying to explain away the unexplainable. Saturday morning brought the first crack in her facade. My daughter mentioned during our phone call that Mommy seemed upset and had been making lots of phone calls. She asked if everything was okay, and I assured her it was just grown-up stuff that didn't concern her. Update 1. Monday morning arrived with radio silence from my ex's legal team. My attorney called around noon to say this was typical. They were likely scrambling to mount some kind of defense or, more probably, looking for a way to settle before this went to court. Tuesday morning changed everything. My attorney called at 8:15 a.m. with news that made me smile for the first time in weeks. My ex's lawyer had requested an emergency conference call to discuss potential resolution options. Translation: they wanted to surrender before the battle even began. The call was scheduled for 2 p.m. I sat in my attorney's office, listening as opposing counsel stammered through various explanations for their client's behavior. They claimed miscommunication, honest mistakes, and confusion about reporting requirements. My attorney wasn't buying any of it. The truth was simple: they had no defense. The evidence was overwhelming, documented, and undeniable. My ex had been caught red-handed defrauding the court and misappropriating child support funds. Her choices were limited: negotiate now or face potential criminal charges for contempt and fraud. Their first offer was insulting. They wanted to adjust the support amount slightly and promised better record-keeping going forward. My attorney countered with our demands: immediate reduction in support payments to reflect her actual income, reimbursement for fraudulent overpayments dating back 2 years, and mandatory financial oversight for all future support modifications. Wednesday brought more desperate attempts at negotiation. My ex's attorney called 3 times, each conversation revealing more panic than the last. They were clearly advising their client that going to court would be catastrophic. The turning point came Wednesday evening. Rodriguez called with additional information he'd uncovered during his continued investigation. My ex had also been receiving unreported cash payments from private clients, further inflating her hidden income. This new evidence would push her actual earnings to nearly 4 times what she'd reported to the court. I forwarded this information to my attorney immediately. She called me back within an hour, barely containing her excitement. This additional evidence didn't just strengthen our case. It potentially opened my ex up to tax fraud charges as well. Thursday morning's negotiation call had a completely different tone. My ex's attorney was practically begging for resolution. They accepted our financial demands almost immediately and agreed to additional stipulations we hadn't even requested. They wanted this buried before it attracted attention from other authorities. Update 2. By Thursday afternoon, we had a preliminary agreement. My monthly support payments would be reduced by 60%, reflecting what I should have been paying based on her actual income. She would reimburse me for 2 years of overpayments, a sum totaling nearly $15,000. Additionally, any future support modifications would require full financial disclosure, including tax returns, bank statements, and employment verification. But I wasn't done. My attorney suggested one final stipulation that would ensure this never happened again. Any future discrepancies in reported income would result in immediate contempt proceedings and potential criminal referral. My ex would also be responsible for all legal fees associated with this matter. The agreement was signed Friday morning. My ex never spoke directly to me throughout this entire process. Everything went through attorneys. I imagine she was furious, embarrassed, and probably terrified about what other financial scrutiny might follow. The immediate impact was significant. My monthly financial obligation dropped from $1,800 to $720, more accurately reflecting both our actual incomes and our daughter's real needs. The reimbursement check would arrive within 30 days, money that would go directly into a college fund for my daughter. More importantly, the precedent was set. Any future attempts at financial manipulation would be met with immediate legal action and full disclosure requirements. My ex's ability to game the system had been permanently eliminated. Update 3. 3 weeks later, the long-term consequences became clear. My ex's financial situation underwent rapid changes that suggested she was finally living within her actual means rather than supplemented by fraudulent support payments. The BMW disappeared from her driveway, replaced by a more modest sedan. The social media posts featuring expensive restaurants and luxury purchases stopped entirely. My daughter, thankfully, seemed unaffected by the legal drama. Our custody arrangement continued unchanged, and she never mentioned any disruption to her routine or activities. This confirmed what I'd suspected all along. The support money I'd been paying was primarily funding my ex's lifestyle rather than our child's needs. Rodriguez provided a final report detailing the complete scope of the financial fraud. Over the course of 3 years, my ex had hidden approximately $78,000 in income while claiming poverty. The overpaid support, combined with her unreported earnings, had artificially inflated her lifestyle by nearly $2,000 per month. The most satisfying aspect wasn't the financial victory, it was the restoration of fairness. For too long, I'd been manipulated through emotional blackmail and false claims about our daughter's needs. The legal system had been exploited through deliberate misrepresentation and document fraud. My attorney mentioned that this case would likely influence how thoroughly financial disclosures are examined in future modifications. The precedent established could help other parents dealing with similar manipulation. 6 months later, I received an unexpected benefit from this ordeal. The reduced support payments allowed me to increase my contributions to my daughter's college fund and purchase a larger home with space for her to have her own room during our custody time. The money that had been fraudulently extracted was now being used for its intended purpose, genuinely improving my child's life. My ex never attempted another support modification request. The required financial transparency and potential consequences had apparently eliminated any motivation to manipulate the system further. Our interactions became strictly limited to necessary co-parenting communications, which suited both of us perfectly. The final irony wasn't lost on me. Her threatening text message about taking me to court had backfired spectacularly. Instead of increasing her fraudulent income stream, it had exposed her entire scheme and resulted in exactly the opposite outcome she'd intended. Looking back, I realized this experience taught me valuable lessons about standing up to manipulation and the importance of documentation. Too often, people accept unfair situations because challenging them seems too difficult or expensive. In this case, the investment in proper legal representation and investigation had paid for itself many times over. My daughter would grow up knowing that fairness and honesty matter, even when dealing with difficult people. The money now properly allocated would provide for her genuine needs rather than subsidizing someone else's deceptive lifestyle. Sometimes the best response to a threat is simply calling someone's bluff. For words, proceed as necessary, had unraveled years of financial manipulation and restored balance to a situation that had been unfair from the beginning. The victory wasn't about revenge or spite. It was about ensuring that resources meant for my child's welfare actually reached their intended purpose. Justice, it turned out, was worth every penny of legal fees and every hour of investigation. My ex learned an expensive lesson about the consequences of fraud and manipulation. I learned that sometimes the best defense is a well-prepared offense, backed by irrefutable evidence and competent legal representation. The system worked exactly as it should when provided with complete and accurate information. Truth, as it often does, prevailed over deception.